Hello friends, my name is Shivam from DevOps Schools and I will help you to enable your learning process in various technologies of DevOps, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data and many more. This is our initiative to help you by sharing multiple tutorials and videos. And if you want any specific tutorials or any particular topic, then please do comment in the below comment section and I will help you with it. Also, please subscribe to our premium services on YouTube, which will give you access to more content and videos to enhance your knowledge about all these topics. Also, if you want me to help you with regards to the online trainings and classroom sessions by our qualified trainers, then please do write me at contact@devopsschool.com. Thank you.
And you can add and remove instances from your load balancer as you need without making any halt to your applications. Your applications need not stop for that. You don't have to disrupt your applications. ELB sort of scales to any given traffic, and you can always have your health checks configured. So what should happen? Let's assume you want to say that ELB should switch.
Hello.
Yeah, I think I saw some technical difficulties on the top of the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
I just switched my network. That's it. All right. So we were here at ELB. Give me 1 second. This network is. All right. So implementing continuity using the combination of these services, this is something which we have to understand. Auto scaling policies, CloudWatch alarms can help you auto scale your applications. You can use this in combination of each other and provide the scalability to your applications. So any CloudWatch metrics can be used for scaling or up or scaling down. Let's say your resource utilization is CPU utilization is going to 80%. You might want to add new instances of your EC2 instances. You might want to add that. So CloudWatch alarm will give you that information, and alarm can trigger. Basically, it can trigger to take decisions that I want to scale up or scale down. So in your architecture, you have to use auto scaling, you have to use EC2 auto scaling and AWS auto scaling, ELB and CloudWatch to design this objective. Okay, this was rather a lengthier topic, but this is sort of important for you to have high available applications. Okay, let's look at some sample questions. Which services work together to enable auto scaling of Amazon EC2 instances? Which services will work together to enable auto scaling of Amazon EC2 instances? First answer is first choice is EC2 auto scaling and ELB, EC2 auto scaling and CloudWatch, EC2 auto scaling, ELB, CloudWatch, EC2, ELB, CloudWatch, auto scaling.
See.
Any other answers?
See.
Yep, that's the right answer. Because on the triad of services we saw this, right? So there is this combination: ELB, auto scaling, and CloudWatch. All right. If you want to fill in any of the gaps, go to this associate certified associate study guide chapter 5, or you may want to refer facts on ELB, CloudWatch, EC2 auto scaling, etc. And then there is a lab as well, a lab for you to do this introduction to EC2 auto scaling. Another question we have: a radio station runs a contest at every day, where every day at noon they make an announcement that generates an immediate spike in traffic. Okay, it requires 8 Amazon EC2 instances to process. All the other time, the website requires 2 EC2 instances. Okay, what is the most cost-effective way to meet this requirement? So note the highlights here in this question. Every day at noon, they will see immediate spike in traffic, and they require 8 instances to process. At other times, 2 instances are good. So what are the choices here? Create an auto scaling group with minimum capacity of 2 and scale up based on CPU utilization. So these are the highlights. And first choice is create a minimum capacity of 2 and scale up to based on CPU utilization. Create an auto scaling group with minimum capacity of 8 at all times. Create an auto scaling group with minimum capacity of 2 and set a schedule to scale up at 11:40 a.m. Create an auto scaling group with minimum capacity of 2 and scale up based on memory utilization.
C, I will choose.
Okay, any other choice? Yeah, so let's eliminate one by one. You are over provisioning, because if you do it, then there's no point of because at other times you are good with 2 instances, right? So why do you want to provide 8 instances? Eliminate that. Eliminate last option also, because you don't want to choose based on memory utilization or CPU utilization, because that will delay. You set a schedule, because you know that at every day you will have a spike at noon. So set a schedule and that scales. Let's look at another question. Which of the following are characteristics of Amazon EC2 auto scaling on AWS? Select 3 answers. Sends traffic to healthy instances, responds to changing conditions by adding or terminating EC2 instances, collects and tracks metrics and set alarms, delivers push notifications, launches instances from specified AMI, enforces the minimum number of EC2 instances. So you have to select 3 answers. There are 6 choices. You can eliminate 2 of the very obvious answers here. Collects and track metrics and set alarms. That's not what auto scaling does, right? It doesn't push notifications also. You can eliminate the wrong choices. It doesn't send traffic to the unhealthy instances. So you're left with these 3 choices. It launches instances from specified Amazon image, because yes, you have to specify image, right? Based on that image, your auto scaling will launch instances, and it will enforce a minimum number of running instances at any given point in time. Okay, so that feature of sending traffic to healthy instances, that is available in AWS auto scaling, not in Amazon EC2 auto scaling. That is some difference here. Right. So if you want to learn more about that, you just look at the auto scaling policies. You have to specify minimum number of instances. You have to specify desired number of capacity and the maximum capacity. You provide that when you create EC2 scaling. All right. Then some exam considerations, what you might want to take while answering that. Use caching strategically to improve performance. So any questions which mentions caches, you want to consider that. You just look at that. So if there is a performance related question and there is caching, consider that. If data is unstructured, Amazon S3 is generally the storage solution. Okay. Know when and why to use auto scaling. And choose the instance and database type that makes most sense for your workload and performance need. That choice is important. With that, we are at the end of this domain, this module. Okay. This module was about design performance architectures. So let's start the next domain, next module. Any questions before we move to next module?
Like one question, like, can we install the NoSQL in the EBS?
NoSQL in what?
Like, can we install a NoSQL databases in the EBS?
EBS.
Yeah.
Ideally, for you to install anything, you need an EC2 instance, right?
Oh, sorry. I mean, in the EC2 instance.
Yeah. So
Next.
on an EC2 instance, yes. So I let me reframe your question like that. Can you install NoSQL on an EC2 instance which is connected to EBS, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, the answer is yes. You can do that.
Okay. And does the CDN has the dynamic data? I mean, how and why? I mean, that means like, do we install EC2s there?
Yeah, EBS can have dynamic data. Yes, yes. EBS can have dynamic data because it is a file storage.
The CDN.
CDN.
Yeah. Like
CDN. Okay, content delivery network, right? Your CloudFront.
CloudFront, yeah.
Yeah, CloudFront. Yeah, CloudFront can have your static data, which is like your files, your images, your media files, or your any media content, or your dynamically, in the sense, if you are, let's assume you are generating some scripts, some Java scripts.
Okay.
You can store that dynamically on CDN, but on CDN it will be static. If there is any change in your JavaScript files, if that gets updated, your CDN will also be updated.
Yeah, the last question, like, what are the, I saw in the screen, what are the AWS Shield and AWS WAF? Like, is it like a workflow I have to?
WAF, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so AWS Shield is a sort of, it is a security solution which is given by AWS. And Wirefall, WAF is Web Application Firewall. We call it as WAF. That is something which prevents your application to be prevents from any DDoS attacks or any some penetrations and all, right? So these are some security services which are provided by AWS.
Where does this AWS Shield act on, like, on what, on all services, or?
So that is yeah, it is acting on your applications. What is, if you are having any prevention requirement, like you want to have some pen test, but you want to prevent some testing, sorry, you want to prevent some penetration.
Okay.
So that sort of penetrations can be used to stop.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, no problem. So more on that you will understand when you specifically go for any security based specialties. But on the exam, you might not be asked at a very detailed level on these services. Like what is Shield, what is WAF? You may not have many questions on that. But in short, you may just note that AWS Shield is like a It's like a managed service to prevent your DDoS attacks. In short,
okay.
that is enough for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. The next module is focusing on a little more on secure applications and architectures. And the outline on this module is determine how to secure application tiers, determine how to secure data, and define the networking infrastructure for single VPC applications. So determine how to secure application tiers. And wherever we come to security, we have to always remember that security is a shared responsibility. So we always talk about shared responsibility model to the users. That part of the responsibility lies with AWS for securing your applications. AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure, and it is responsible for protecting the hardware and the software of the networking and facilities that runs your entire AWS cloud. So AWS is responsible for security which is of the cloud. Okay, and if you see, there is a thin line between these two things. The responsibilities on the customer is as well important. Customer responsibility. Customer is responsible to choose a level of responsibility for configuring. So all the configurations you must perform as part of your security responsibilities. Like for example, if you are having services like EC2 instances or VPC or S3, those are like infrastructure as a service on AWS. So if you are using that infrastructure, you are responsible for providing some security on that as well. You as a customer are also required to perform necessary security configurations. Like you might want to maintain encryptions on your data. If your S3 data is not encrypted, you have not chosen encryption. So then it is your choice which matters here. You might want to do client-side encryption and server-side encryption. You might also want to take care of your network traffic protection. Unless the data is reached inside AWS, you don't get that encryption. So you have to choose for client-side encryption. If you are someone who is already installing your OS on EC2, you might also want to configure that. You might want to have users. You might want to secure your users, user credentials, passwords, security key pairs. You have to maintain that, right? So all that falls as a user in customer's responsibility. And any platform or application and identity access management, all these things will lie with the customer. Then this also talks about AWS IAM, identity access management. And we know that IAM is a web service in AWS which helps you to control access to AWS resources for your users. You can use IAM to control who can use your resources on AWS. Like you can do that by using authentication. And you can also use IAM to specify the resources that they can use and how they can use that resource. So IAM is sort of both used for authentication and authorization. It allows you to grant permissions to a user, to a group of users, and it also allows you to give permissions to roles so that they can administer and use your resources on AWS account. So AWS IAM is something which is used for centrally managing users and user permissions, controls which AWS resources users and application can access. You can create groups, users, roles, and policies. You can also use IAM along with your federated services like Active Directory or any of the other federated accounts. If you are already authenticated somewhere, you don't have to get authenticated again on AWS. So AWS can give the authentication to any external third party also. You can also use services like Google or Facebook for authenticating externally and getting into AWS. So authentication can be offloaded to some other services also. If you are working in a company which already has authentication based on their federated accounts, like Microsoft Active Directory, then you can use that as well. And lastly, you have to follow this principle of granting the least privilege, which means that you only grant for permissions which are required to perform a given task. You have to determine what the users must do, and then you have to design policies accordingly so that you give them least privilege. You should start with minimum set of permissions, and then if you want to add more permissions, you add them as necessary, as important. This is a standard secure approach for starting with least privilege. So what are identities? You have IAM users and groups, IAM roles, federated users, and web identity federation. IAM users and groups which are users which are created within the AWS account. IAM roles are temporary identities used by EC2 instances or any other services. And then you have the federated users. Any user who is part of an Active Directory in a company, maybe they can be used. They can get authenticated and allowed to be used in AWS. And lastly, AWS Web Identity Federation. Users with web identity like Amazon.com or any open ID like Google or Facebook can also be authenticated. And for that users, you will use something called as STS, Secure Token Service. STS is something which is used for giving temporary tokens for users. Let's fill in some gaps if you want. You can look at some of these white papers on overview of security processes in AWS. And then AWS security best practices white papers are available. You can download them. Best practices and when to use AWS STS. This is also a document which will give you information on when to use STS. Let's look at sample questions here. Your AWS account administrator left your company today. Administrator had access to root user and IAM, a personal IAM administrator account. With these accounts, he generated other IAM user and keys. Which of the following should you do today to protect your AWS infrastructure? Select 3 answers here. So you have 6 options, and you have to select 3 right answers here. So what is that important highlights you have to note down here? The administrator who left the company had root user account access and also had a personal IAM account, and he also generated other IAM user keys. So you might want to do, based on these options, you might want to select 3 answers. Can we do that? Okay, let's try to eliminate wrong answers. Firstly, change the password and add MFA, put an IP restriction to, let's look at the wrong answer first. Put an IP restriction on root user logins. You cannot do that. You simply cannot say where the user will come from.
Yeah,
Can you delete all? Sorry?
F.
Can you delete all IAM users? Can you delete all IAM users? Not possible, because if you delete everyone, then you will have to do all that again. Can you relaunch all instances with new roles? Will that work anything? It doesn't work. So eliminate these three wrong answers. Change the password and add a method to root user. That you can do. Rotate keys and change passwords for all IAM users. That you can do. Delete the administrator's IAM user. So the administrator which left, he had an IAM account user, right? You delete that. So these three will be sufficient for you. Let's look at another question. You have a newly developed application hosted on Amazon EC2 instance. This application needs access to Amazon DynamoDB table. Which of the following is most secure way for application to access DynamoDB table? Let's look at the highlights. Newly developed application, access to DynamoDB table, most secure way for application to access. Look at the choices. Configure API credentials in EC2 instance user data for automation. Will you do that? Store API credentials in S3 for durability. Will you do that? Embed API credentials in DynamoDB in application code.
These
And lastly, assign IAM roles to EC2 instances. Yes. So there are three wrong choices and one right answer. Right. Then determine how to secure data. Data in transit. Data in transit, you have to make sure you are following the secured socket layers and transport layer security. SSL and TLS, are you using that? So SSL and TLS can be used for every API, AWS API, to protect data, upload and download. You can provide your own certificates if you want. Okay, and you can basically say that all your data which is sent to AWS API, you want to encrypt that. Data sent to AWS API, it also always uses this HTTPS, so that is secured. All calls are signed with SIGWI for encryption. And if you are using something on premises, your VPN connections are also secured. And AWS Direct Connect, which is a leased line, that is also fully secured. It always follows that SSL TLS also, and they are more secured and encrypted on layer. So data at rest, data which is stored in S3 by default is private. You provide explicit credentials for access. So S3 data is by default private. You provide access to that. And data in client-side encryption, you manage the encryption keys. You always manage the encryption and decryption. That's your responsibility. The encryption key and the tools and all the alternative client-side encryption in which S3 manages, it will free you from the management of encryption keys and all. So if there is a management, encryption management is done by S3, you don't have to manage that encryption. So all the S3 data is accessed over HTTPS. You always have the audit of your objects. You also have the provision to provide resource-based policies on your buckets, your directories and folders, and your objects. S3 server-side encryption will use multi-factor encryption for securing your data and encrypting your data. So there are these two different encryption methods what you can use: client-side server-side management or client-side encryption management. If you are someone who is using S3 server-side encryption, you have this option of S3 managed keys, where S3 managed keys are at the S3 level. And then you also have this provision of using KMS. KMS is again a managed service from Amazon for managing your encryption keys. It is key management service. And then lastly, you can also provide your customer provided keys. You can manage them as well. So on the server side also, if you are encrypting, you can manage your own keys.
Please enroll our general membership for $399 plan to get access of all the parts.
Along with that, you can access our other tutorials such as Docker, Ansible, Jenkins, Terraform, Splunk, AWS, Azure, and various other DevOps related premium tutorials with our channel membership. If you would have any issues with our channel membership, you can drop an email to us at contact@devopsschool.com, or you can also unsubscribe from channel membership anytime if you don't want to continue or did not like the video. To get our channel membership, click onto the join button, select the $399 plan and grow your skills immensely. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries. We will reply to them at the earliest. Thanks for watching.